Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to do two rectangular to polar conversions. And so these are two rectangular numbers. We can call this first one A, and that will be plus JB. Right, so we know that 640 is A, so we can say A equals 640, and B is equal to 480. And keep in mind that if you see this plus sign here, that belongs to the 840, and down here we see a negative. That belongs to this 210 down here, right? So the B variable gets the positive or the negative that's in the center of our rectangular form. That's really important because if you miss that negative, then it will be incorrect. So these equations can be put into our square root equation. We can say that we want to solve for C equals, or C at the angle of theta. That's our polar form that we want to aim at. And so we're going to take our rectangular form and we're going to solve for C, and then we're going to solve for theta, and then we'll write it out in this equation at the angle of here. So our C variable is equal to the square root of A squared plus B squared. Right, so we could plug that in. We already know what A and B are. They're over here. And so we just got to square them and add them together, put them under the square root equation, and that's going to solve for our C variable. That tells us it's our hypotenuse of our triangle, right? So this is going to be related to triangles. The angle that we're at, we can call that theta. And we can say that that is going to be the inverse tangent, tan to the -1. We'll see where that is in the calculator. You can't plug that directly in. You have to click a button that says tan inverse tangent like this. We'll open parenthesis and we'll put our b variable on top and our a variable on bottom. But remember that b has that plus or minus with it. It gets whatever is in the center of this equation here. So you got to make sure you transfer that in. And then we'll close that off, and that is going to be our theta. So we could solve for both of these. We know these two variables here. We can say that the square root of a squared, 640, plus the b variable of 480 squared, let's give us an 800. So our C value is 800. And we can do the next one also. We can say that we have this inverse tangent equation. And so we'll go into our function. We see tangent right here, but we can't actually put the negative to the -1 on it there. So we can't use that one. But we can go into function and use the tangent to the -1 right here. So plug that in. Go back to our main for our buttons. And then we can say that we have plus or minus b over a. We see that our b is the positive. So we'll say it's just positive 480. Divided by our a variable of 640, and that gives us a positive 36.869, and we can round that up. It can be 36.9. That is our full digit, so we'll rewrite that in our polar form here. We'll say that we have a C variable of 800 at an angle of 36.9 degrees. Right? Okay, so let's do the next one here. The next one falls along the same path, but it gets this negative in here, and that kind of changes things up. So we still have A minus J, B, and so we know that B is going to be a negative now. So when we write A equals 128, and B is equal to -210. That's really important. So let's write out our C equation. We know that we're aiming at C at an angle of theta, and our C variable is equal to the square root of A squared, so 128, squared plus b squared, right? It was a -210 squared. And we know that if we multiply a negative by a negative, we end up with a positive. And that's what this squared is doing right here. It's going to end up taking this -210, multiplying it by a -210, and it's going to end up with a positive output. Right? And so that negative does not matter that much for the square root equation, but it matters a lot for the tangent equation. When we put the theta in, we say that that's tangent inverse, and that gives us a plus and minus b on top, and we know that's a negative now, so -210 divided by 128, and we'll solve for that out, and we should end up with a negative theta value, a negative angle for our digit. We'll plug that in. So that we have the square root of 128 squared, and we'll add that to, we'll open a parenthesis here, and we'll put in this negative, just so we can say that it's not going to do anything here if we square it. So right now without it squared, and then with it squared. And 248, or well, 246, we can round that up. We only need 3 digits, so we can say that C is equal to 246 And we'll get our theta also. We can plug that into our equation over here, send this out, and say that we have the function of inverse tangent. And we have our negative b on top, so negative 210, divided by our a, 128. We're okay with this negative drops here, right? That can be the same thing if it's up here or down here. It'll be the same anyway. The final answer is going to be negative. And then we have a negative 58.6. So our theta is equal to negative 58.6. So watch out for that negative, right? So our final answer is actually equal to 246 at an angle of negative 58.6 degrees. All right, let us know if you guys have other questions.